I was having a conversation with one of the teachers that I'm mentoring.
You're a mentor?
Yeah, I am a mentor. And by the way, if you are interested in kind of mentoring program that I offer, please click down below. I'll have a link there, and we can see if it's a good fit for you. So feel free to do that. But as I was saying, I was having a conversation with one of my mentees, and we were talking about something that his principal observed. And it was like this. He said, the principal said, hey, I noticed that you kind of get fixed on certain things in your classroom, meaning that when you're up there lecturing and doing notes, you don't see all the stuff happening in your classroom. And so we talked about a solution for that, and that's what I wanted to share with you, was our conversation, and more important, the solution that we came up with, so that way he can do a better job of keeping track of everything going on in his classroom. But first, let's play that intro. So when we dove into the conversation here with the principal, it mainly focused around like the students were on their cell phone, had earbuds in, or doing other things besides actually participating in the lesson. And so that was something the principal wanted them to work on. And so I started thinking, how do you solve this problem? How do you solve that problem? Because you know how it is when you're in front of the classroom, there's so many things going on at one point in time. And it's hard enough just to give the lesson as it is. And so I asked him what was the flow of his class period. And to my surprise, he had a really good flow going on. His students came in, they had an activity that they were going to work on. Then from there, he told them, what the standard was. He told them the agenda. Then they went into some direct instructions. And then he gave them a chance to actually work with the material, and then finally a closure. So he had the foundation there of having a great class period. So then what was the issue? What was the principal upset about? And when we dove into it, it seems that during each one of these sections, things were kind of happening without us being totally aware of it. And so my solution to this was proximity. Oh, you guys heard that word, right? Proximity. You want to be close to students. That way, by your presence next to them, it discourages unwanted behavior. We hear this all the time. But how do you actually implement that in your classroom? Especially if you're giving instruction, especially if you're teaching or notes, how do you actually do that? And so we broke it down. And so what happens for his warm-up activity is he'll go around with a stamp and stamp different things. And I remember doing that as a teacher. When I remember doing it when I was an early teacher. I would have stamps and stamp. But what I found is I got so caught up in that stamping that things were happening behind my back. And so to solve that problem, here's what I recommended, is that he would actually have a student do that. A student would go around stamping the warm-up activities, show that kids got credit for it. Then he can still monitor the classroom and make sure everything's going on like it should be. Then the next part was when he was going over the agenda and the standard. I was asking, where are you at in the room? And the answer is in the front of the room. And that makes sense, because if you're getting a presentation, you want to be in the front of the room. But as teachers, do we really need to be in the front of the room? Because if what the kids are looking at is in the front of the room, do we really need to be there? And the answer to that is no, you don't. I know in my classroom, don't get me wrong, I'm in the classroom, and I'm in the front of the room quite often. But there's no problem with me walking around as I'm giving instruction, because what the students need to see is at the front of the room, but I don't necessarily have to be there. And so my advice to him was, as you are giving out the agenda for the day, as you are sharing the standard, you don't necessarily have to be in the front of the room doing that. You can do that as you're walking around the classroom. Once again, you got that proximity part of it there. And when I asked him what kind of notes were you doing, his answer was he's doing like a guided reading, where students will basically be given the notes, but then have to fill in the blanks as you do the presentation. And I know for me, in my experience, anytime I did that, students would quickly fill in the blanks, and then they would just zone out for the rest of the time. And so once again, the idea is that idle hands are the devil's playground. And so sometimes that would cause problems. And so my suggestion was this: instead of having them do that, maybe actually have them copy down more information. Now, at the same time, the important part is, the reason you would do that is because it keeps them from having the idle hands, but also it allows, once again, for the teacher to walk the room. So they can walk the room. They don't have to be up front sharing the information. They can walk the room when that's going on. And so that's my recommendations for the notes. But then I thought about, All right, those are great ideas, but you know how it is. There's so many things to do in the classroom, it's hard to focus on a certain thing, like changing behavior, like proximity. So how do you go about doing that? And I thought about anything. Anytime you try to create a new habit, it's going to be hard to do, and this has to become a habit. And so we kind of came up with a game plan, and the game plan is this, that he's going to put a little piece of paper in the back of the room. And the idea is that every time he walks the back of the room, once again proximity, walk around the classroom, he makes a mark on that paper. So the idea is that by the end of the class period, if you got like 10 marks on it, that tells you that you walked the classroom like 10 times, which is a pretty good number, right? And if you're in the front of the classroom, you look back there and you see the paper, you're like, oh, I got to make sure I walk the classroom. So the overall plan we put in place was the idea that we want to be walking the classroom, proximity, in order to discourage behavior, but to train ourselves to do that, we created this new way of forming a habit where there's a paper in the back, so we have to mark it every time we come across. Hopefully, with all the things put into place, the next time the principal comes, the recommendation will not be that you got to keep better eye on the classroom, but instead the principal will compliment him on everything that he is doing correct.